Right. And the block button, of course, in
Ugh.
Mortal Kombat is not a controversial thing back then. It was just we just accepted it. It's like, oh, that's cool.
Well, yeah, it was kind of it was kind of a way to solve the issue of like, holding the wrong way to block, right? So at the
Sure.
time, it wasn't like cross-ups were a huge thing at the time. It was, I think Mortal Kombat 1 came out in 1992, and it was still too soon in the from the release of the release of Street Fighter 2 to where people were like, oh, cross-ups, we got to do cross-ups.
Like
So
tech and that didn't exist really. Yeah.
yeah, they just were like, okay, we're gonna make a block button because hold back to block is kind of, maybe that's not the best way of going about it. And then they just had a block button.
Or maybe Ed Boon got hit by so much cross-ups he couldn't take it anymore.
Yeah, well, I mean, so there actually is kind of a story about stun and fatality that I guess
That's right. He
that's
did
in one of
the
my videos.
interview.
Yeah, the way
Yeah.
that fatalities came about was because he didn't like stun. The very same salt that came from the stun mechanic has been converted into one of the most iconic features in gaming history.
One of the things about Street Fighter that annoyed me and I loved was when you get the other guy dizzy. That was such a bad feeling, and it was such a good feeling when you're the guy who's attacking him. I want to have that good feeling, but I don't want to give the other guy the bad feeling. So we moved the dizzy to the end of the fight.
For game designers, salt can be a driver of innovation. So I don't know. Like
He didn't like rewarding the player who was doing good, so
Well-
he moved it at the end of the
Hey,
fight.
I didn't say that. This
Okay.
is all coming from you.
Okay,
so
okay. I get
I'm
it.
just saying that that's what he just wanted to put the dizzy at the end of the game where it doesn't matter anymore. Where there and that's how
Yeah.
fatalities came. But anyway, so the block button is something that at the time wasn't like controversial, or people didn't really think too much of
Right.
it, and some people thought it was like, oh, it's kind of a cool feature. But obviously that changes the game big time. To the point where once these games were starting to get competitive and people were realizing like, oh, okay, this is, these are fighting games, people expected cross-ups and holding back. And that was like a skill to be able to like block the correct direction and know what your opponent's going to do in order to like mix you up. And because Mortal Kombat always had the block button, it just never had that aspect of the gameplay. And
Right.
that became a very important part of the gameplay. We know because of the riots I was mentioning, right? So
Okay.
it was the injustice thing, and this is a bit of research that you came up with, or actually maybe more than just research. You actually played Injustice and took it seriously, right?
I played Injustice because it was hold back to block. That was the
Yes.
only reason, and I thought that could be a kind of a bridging experience where I could actually now kind of get into the Mortal Kombat scene as well, which I kind of did eventually.
Yeah.
But I played Injustice like as if I was treating it like a Street Fighter or like a traditional hold back to block game. So yeah.
Yeah. So you kind of brought that to my attention, and we had a conversation about it. And it was very interesting because when you look on the forums, the Test Your Might forums, there are people that were very upset by in Injustice being a hold back to block game. And this is a foreign concept if you're like a Street Fighter person, like I am.
Yeah,
Like, this is
that's why-
wait, what's wrong with hold back to block? That's how fighting games are
Exactly.
supposed to be, right? And so I realized there's like a huge divide here, and this is why hold back to block, or I shouldn't say hold back to block, but I should say it's not hold back to block.
Sure.
Is the category. So
Right.
originally I was going to put block button game as the category, but Grand Blue Versus
That's right.
has a block button.
Eventually, many games did take that route as well.
Yeah,
So,
but they have hold back to block and block
yeah.
button. But the thing that makes Mortal Kombat the way it is that not just that it has a block button, but that it also does not have hold back to block. If you just hold back, it doesn't block.
That's right.
So that's the thing that makes it so different, right? And so Grand Blue Versus can still stay in the grounded hold back to block category because it
That's
still
right.
has that. So that's the distinction that I wanted to make. That I feel that is really important. But
Yeah, and
we're
don't get us wrong. We're not saying it's right or wrong. Like it was just a new phenomenon for those who are more experienced in the hold back to block games would think that that's more natural. And then, of course, later on, I found out, people who are really dedicated to Mortal Kombat, holding block is very natural for them. It's like second nature, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I know that you're a multi-fighting game specialist. You've played a ton of
Yeah, I had
different.
to adapt to a lot of different mechanics.
Yeah, you're like Liquipedia has like all these fighting games. Like, wow, this damn, like
Yeah, I was surprised they even had a Wikipedia. Thanks
Yeah,
for
yeah.
whoever tracked that, or if
Yeah.
it's like done automatically.
dude, like you
whoever-
have like Skullgirls like results on there. It's like
Yeah.
crazy. You really
Played a lot
have
of different
played
games
so many
back in the
games,
day,
yeah.
yes.
But it's so that was a great example of this idea that I just made up this term, predator effect.
Right.
So I didn't know like what do you call it when there's something from a different game that causes like some massive chaos.
That's right.
And it's hard. It's like this different kind of technology or whatever. And
Aliens invading Earth. That's
yeah.
Predator
And
effect,
Predator is
literally.
like a great analogy for that. And so I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna say predator effect, and if people think it's stupid and it doesn't catch on, whatever, but I think it is cool to
I mean,
to
if
coin
you're
this
into
term.
like